Captain Tizeri's crystalline appendages trembled as the Starweaver's emergency sirens blared through the bridge. The spatial anomaly had appeared out of nowhere, a writhing mass of purple-black energy that defied the ship's categorization systems. "Full reverse," she commanded, her crystalline form pulsing with urgent patterns of light that reflected off the bridge's polished surfaces. The Zentarian survey vessel shuddered as its engines strained against the anomaly's pull. Lieutenant Vex, a member of the gaseous aetheri species, swirled anxiously within their containment suit. "Captain, conventional engines are failing. Requesting permission to attempt an emergency quantum slip." "Granted," Tizeri responded, knowing the risks. Quantum slips were notoriously unpredictable, especially this far from mapped space. The Starweaver's systems engaged with a high-pitched whine, and reality twisted around them. When the quantum interference cleared from their sensors, they found themselves in an unremarkable sector of space, except for the massive cylindrical object floating serenely against the backdrop of unfamiliar stars. The object was clearly artificial, its surface marked with faded symbols, and what appeared to be ancient text in an unknown script. "By the first light," whispered Science Officer Mixtall, their gelatinous form pressing against the viewing screen. "Captain, preliminary scans indicate this structure is approximately 800,000 years old, yet it's maintaining perfect structural integrity." Tizeri felt her crystalline matrix vibrate with excitement. This far exceeded their original mission parameters of cataloging plasma storms in the Orion Arm's unexplored regions. "Full sensor sweep. Look for any signs of active technology." The results defied Federation understanding. The vessel's power signature was barely detectable, yet it maintained thousands of sealed chambers at temperatures approaching absolute zero. More incredibly, the ship's defensive systems were still active, and they were adapting to the Starweaver's presence in real time. "Captain." Vex's gaseous form condensed with concern. "The vessel is scanning us. It's granting us access codes." Before Tizeri could respond, a message appeared on their primary display in perfect modern Federation standard. "Welcome, descendants. ARC project awaits verification." Against centuries of protocol and her own better judgment, Tizeri made a decision that would change galactic civilization forever. "Prepare a boarding party. I'll lead it personally." The Federation boarding shuttle navigated through an opening that appeared in the ancient vessel's hull, guided by lights that activated along their path. The docking procedure was unnervingly perfect, as if the ship had been expecting them. Inside, the air was pristine, maintained by systems that somehow still functioned after hundreds of millennia. The boarding party's lights illuminated corridor after corridor of sealed chambers, each containing a single occupant suspended in some form of preservation field far more sophisticated than anything in the Federation's technological database. "Impossible," breathed Dr. Egsaw, the team's cynobiologist. "These beings, according to these readings, they're in perfect metabolic stasis. No degradation, no cellular damage. They're all alive." Zeri approached one of the chambers, her crystalline form reflecting off its pristine surface. Inside, a being lay peaceful in suspended animation. Bictal, soft-skinned, with bilateral symmetry, and a curious growth of protein strands on its head. The chamber's display activated at her proximity, showing information in that same ancient script that somehow translated perfectly to Federation standard. Subject: Thompson, Amanda. Title: Doctor. Specialty: Deep Space Colonization. NASA. Status: Optimal. NASA. Tizeri's universal translator struggled with the acronym. Cross-reference with historical databases. The response from their ship's AI caused every member of the boarding party to freeze in disbelief. National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Earth. Sol System. Humanity. The mythical humans of Earth. The species whose scattered artifacts had influenced the development of countless civilizations, whose theoretical mathematics had laid the groundwork for quantum slip technology, whose fragments of art and music still defied replication by the Federation's most advanced AI systems. They weren't just legends. They were here, preserved in perfect suspension, waiting to awaken. As Tizeri stared at the peaceful face of Dr. Thompson, she realized that the Federation's carefully ordered galaxy was about to change forever. Following protocols developed over millennia of careful species interaction, would demand she leave this discovery untouched, waiting for years of committee decisions and careful analysis. Instead, she gave an order that would echo through history: begin awakening sequence verification. The chamber hummed to life, and 800,000 years of sleep began to end. The awakening chamber filled with a soft blue light as ancient machinery hummed to life. Federation scientists crowded around the pod, their diverse anatomies reflecting their specialized roles: crystalline Zentarians for data analysis, gaseous ethery for atmospheric monitoring, and gelatinous mix for biological observation. Life signs stabilizing, reported Dr. Igza, their translucent form rippling with excitement. Neural activity increasing. It's remarkable. The subject's cellular structure is perfectly preserved, not a single sign of degradation after 800 millennia. Captain Tizeri maintained her position near the chamber, her crystalline form casting prismatic patterns across the medical bay. Universal translators at full capacity. We have no idea what language they'll. The chamber's top panel slid open with a gentle hiss, releasing a puff of vapor. The being inside, the human, opened her eyes, blinked twice, and immediately tried to sit up. "Whoa," Dr. Amanda Thompson said, pressing a hand to her forehead. "This is definitely not Mars." She looked around at the assembled aliens and managed a weak smile. "Unless Mars got a lot more interesting while I was out." The universal translators worked perfectly, yet the Federation team stood frozen. It wasn't the words themselves that confused them. It was the layers of meaning. The human's voice carried what their sensors identified as humor, anxiety, professional curiosity, and defensive caution all at once. Even more baffling, her facial features were constantly shifting in subtle ways that sent their social analysis protocols into chaos. "Welcome to the year 870,000 AD," Tizeri announced formally, using the careful diplomatic protocols established for first contact situations. "I am Captain Tizeri of the Galactic Federation vessel Starweaver." "We." 870,000. Amanda interrupted, swinging her legs over the side of the chamber. "That's about 869,000 years longer than we planned for." "Huh." She paused, then added with a slight grin, "I don't suppose my parking tickets have expired." The Federation team's translators struggled to process the concept of parking tickets in this context, detecting multiple layers of humor, deflection, and something their systems labeled as coping mechanism through absurdist observation. "Dr. Thompson," Mexa oozed forward cautiously, "your neural patterns indicate you are experiencing significant emotional distress, yet you are engaging in non-essential communication patterns. This is contradictory." Amanda laughed, a sound that made several Federation sensors recalibrate. "Welcome to humanity, friend. We're walking contradictions." She tried to stand, wobbled slightly, and caught herself on the chamber's edge. "Speaking of humanity, how many others are awake?" "You are the first," Tizeri answered, watching in fascination as multiple emotional responses played across the human's face simultaneously. "We sought to establish communication protocols before." "Wake up Max Phillips next," Amanda interrupted again, her tone shifting to something more commanding. "Pod 2187. He's our medical specialist." Then Elizabeth Chen in 2188. She designed the pods. "We need to make sure the systems are stable before we wake everyone else." The Federation team exchanged glances, their carefully planned awakening schedule already derailing. "According to protocol," Tizeri began, "all decisions must be." "With all due respect, Captain," Amanda said, her voice taking on yet another tone their translators labeled as politely implacable. "These are my people. 870,000 years ago. They trusted me to lead this mission. That responsibility doesn't end just because we overslept a bit. She stood straighter now, her initial disorientation apparently fading. Also, you can all stop capitalizing every word when you speak. We'll get along much better if we just talk normally. The Federation team's universal translators nearly crashed trying to process how the human had detected their formal diplomatic speech patterns through the translation system. Even more disturbing, they found themselves automatically adjusting their speech patterns to match her request. "Very well," Tzeri said, surprising herself with the informal response. Pod 2187, Max Phillips. As the awakening sequence began for the second pod, Amanda moved to peer at the ship's systems, apparently unconcerned by the array of alien beings around her. "By the way," she added casually, "someone should prepare your xenobiologists for a shock. Humans are classified as a death world species. We evolved in what you consider extreme conditions. Our biology is going to raise some eyebrows." She paused, looking around at the assembled aliens. Well, metaphorical eyebrows, anyway. The Federation team watched in growing fascination as their carefully planned first contact protocols continued to unravel in the face of human unpredictability. In the background, Pod 2187 began to hum as another legend prepared to wake. The Federation's Grand Archive, a massive space station dedicated to cultural preservation, had never been so chaotic. 2 weeks after the first awakening, Dr. Amanda Thompson and her initial team of 50 awakened humans had turned the station's carefully ordered protocols upside down. "They're doing it again," muttered Archive Director Zixtal, their crystalline form flickering with distress patterns as they watched the security feeds. In the station's primary recreation area, a human engineer named Mike Rodriguez was teaching a group of ethery children how to play something called tag, a primitive pursuit game that had absolutely no educational value according to Federation standards. The children's gaseous forms swirled with excitement as they chased each other through the chamber, their containment suits equipped with small touch sensors to replicate the human game. Their parents, rather than stopping this unauthorized activity, were watching with what the Archive's emotional sensors classified as curiosity and amusement. Director Amanda approached, carrying something that made Zixtal's crystalline structure vibrate with alarm. A cup of hot coffee, a stimulant that humans had somehow convinced the station's food synthesizers to produce. "We need to talk about your species segregation policies." "Those policies have been in place for 10,000 years, Zixtal replied, automatically slipping into formal speech patterns from stress. "Each species has specific environmental and social requirements that—" "That's exactly what I mean," Amanda interrupted, taking a sip of her coffee. "You're doing the capital letter thing again. Look at those kids out there. They're adapting just fine to each other. The Ethery figured out how to make their containment suits work for tag. The Zentarians created crystal chimes to laugh with. And yesterday I saw a mix teaching humans how to modulate our vocal tones to match their resonance patterns." A commotion from the science wing interrupted their discussion. Dr. Max Phillips, the newly awakened medical specialist, had apparently done something to send the Federation's biological research team into a frenzy. "He just regenerated tissue," one of the Zentarian scientists was saying, their crystal fragments spinning in excitement. "Without medical intervention. A minor abrasion just healed on its own." "Yeah, we do that," Amanda said with a shrug. "Basic human biology. Wait until they find out about our gut bacteria. That'll really blow their minds." Director Zixtal's horror at the mention of internal symbiotic organisms was interrupted by another alert. In the engineering section, Elizabeth Chen had apparently recruited a team of mixed-species technicians and was upgrading the station's environmental systems. The efficiency algorithms were too rigid. Elizabeth's voice came through the comm system. "We've added some flexibility to account for species interactions. Also, we figured out how to make the atmospheric barriers permeable to sound without compromising containment. The etheric choir can now perform with the Zentarian Crystal Resonance Orchestra." But that's not how the systems were designed to work, Zixtal protested. Exactly. Elizabeth's voice carried that distinctly human tone of enthusiasm that the Federation's emotional sensors still couldn't properly classify. We're making them work better. Different species weren't meant to be kept apart. You're all missing out on so much potential synergy. Amanda watched as Mike Rodriguez finished his game with the Aetheri children, their gaseous forms now swirling in patterns that mimic human laughter. Nearby, a human anthropologist was deep in conversation with a Zentarian historian, their discussion punctuated by waves of crystalline light that the human was attempting to replicate with hand gestures. Your Federation spent 10,000 years perfecting isolation, Amanda said softly. We spent our entire history learning to adapt and connect. That's how we survived on Earth, by forming bonds with everything from wolves to bacteria. It's not just what we do, it's what we are. Director Zixtal's sensors detected multiple layers of meaning in her words, along with something else that their systems tagged as passionate conviction. Before they could respond, another alert demanded attention. Apparently, a group of humans had discovered the station's zero-gravity chamber and were teaching mixed youngsters how to do somersaults. You should join them, Amanda suggested, finishing her coffee. Might help you understand why we can't live in boxes. Humanity survived by breaking boundaries, Director. It's in our DNA, quite literally, given how many viral mutations we've incorporated over our evolution. Speaking of which, has Max told your medical team about our adaptive immune system yet? As if on cue, excited shouting erupted from the medical wing, followed by the distinct sound of Federation protocols being cheerfully ignored in the name of scientific discovery. The age of isolation was ending, one broken rule at a time. The Federation's Scientific Council chamber had never witnessed such disorder. Holographic displays flickered with unauthorized modification warnings as Amanda Thompson stood before the assembled council members, casually drinking her third cup of coffee, a substance that had now been classified as a controlled substance in 16 Federation sectors. So you just changed it. Council member Vixtal's crystalline form pulsed with disbelief patterns, without submitting a proposal, without running simulations, without consulting the design authority. Well, yeah. Amanda gestured to the holographic display showing the modified maintenance bot. It was trying to clean my coffee cup while I was still drinking from it. So I tweaked its priority recognition protocols. Now it brings me coffee instead. You reprogrammed a Federation maintenance unit to violate its core directives. Another council member's voice crackled with static through their translator. I improved it, Amanda corrected. And before you start with the capital letters again, you should see what Mike did to the waste recycling system. Turns out 20th century submarine tech had some pretty interesting solutions for closed-loop systems. The council erupted into chaos as even more unauthorized modifications came to light. Elizabeth Chen had completely redesigned the station's quantum communication arrays using principles from ancient Earth radio telescopes. The Federation's finest quantum engineers were still trying to understand how it had doubled the transmission speed. But these systems were perfected over thousands of years, protested Council member Zara, their gaseous form swirling agitatedly in their containment suit. Each species contributed their specialized knowledge to. That's exactly the problem, interrupted Dr. Max Phillips, who had been quietly observing from the back. He stepped forward, pulling up his own holographic display. You've all specialized so much that you can't see the connections anymore. Look at your medical scanning technology, brilliant for detailed analysis, but it completely misses the forest for the trees. Forest. Trees. The Council's universal translator struggled with the idiom. It means you're so focused on the details that you miss the bigger picture, Amanda explained. Watch this. She nodded to Max, who activated a modified medical scanner. The display showed a real-time view of the chamber's occupants, but in a way the Council had never seen before. By combining your quantum scanning tech with principles from 20th century MRI machines, Max explained, we can see how different species' energy patterns interact. Those interference patterns you've been trying to minimize. They're not problems. They're opportunities. The council watched in stunned silence as the display showed the complex web of interactions between their different species, patterns they'd spent millennia trying to isolate and suppress. And here's the really fun part, Amanda added, pulling up another display. Remember how your FTL drives kept hitting that efficiency plateau? Elizabeth figured that out too. Your engineers were so specialized that nobody noticed the similarity to an old Earth problem. Fluid dynamics in rocket nozzles. We solved that one back in the 1960s. Impossible, breathed one of the council members. The mathematics involved in FTL propulsion are completely different from primitive chemical rockets. Amanda grinned. The math is different. The principle is the same. Sometimes you need to step back about 800,000 years to see it clearly. The council chamber's AI chose that moment to announce another series of unauthorized modifications. Apparently, a team of human engineers had discovered the station's quantum fabrication systems and decided they would make excellent 3D printers. Look, Amanda said, her tone softening at the council's obvious distress. We understand these systems are your life's work, but humanity's greatest strength isn't our specialized knowledge. It's our ability to connect different ideas in new ways. We survived on Earth because we had to be generalists, had to see patterns across different fields. She paused, then added with a slight smile. Also, we're really bad at accepting arbitrary limitations. Did you know your food synthesizers can make pizza now? The programming was actually pretty similar to your molecular assembly lines for Starship hulls. The Council's unified cry of "You modified the molecular assembly lines" echoed through the chamber just as the station's newly upgraded environmental systems began playing what sounded suspiciously like human music through the quantum communication array. Innovation, it seemed, waited for no committee. The Federation Grand Council chamber on New Saturn hadn't seen such turmoil since the Quantum Wars 3,000 years ago. Representatives from 200 species filled the massive amphitheater, their arguments creating a cacophony that the universal translators struggled to process. The humans must be contained. The Regelian ambassador's mechanical avatar projected its warning across the chamber. In just 3 months, they have disrupted 5,000 years of carefully maintained social order. 72 species have already filed requests to modify their isolation protocols. Amanda Thompson stood at the center of the chamber, her casual stance a stark contrast to the formal postures around her. Maybe that's because isolation isn't natural, she suggested, causing several ambassadors to recoil at her lack of formal protocol. We've already proven that different species can not only coexist but thrive together. Proven. The Zentarian High Commissioner's crystalline form flashed warning patterns. You've caused chaos. Your species has modified restricted technology, encouraged cross-species socialization. And, they paused, their translator struggling, introduced something called Cryo Knights to 17 diplomatic stations. The Aetheri are particularly good at Earth classical rock, Amanda noted with a slight smile. Something about their gaseous form really captures the spirit of Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody. Before the council could process this, Dr. Max Phillips burst into the chamber, a profound breach of protocol that sent ripples of shock through the assembled diplomats. Amanda, we have a problem. The Nexus Collective's infiltration is worse than we thought. The chamber erupted into fresh chaos. The Nexus Collective was a classified threat, unknown to most of the ambassadors present. Amanda's expression hardened as she turned to address the Grand Council's security director. You want to explain why you didn't tell us that cybernetic infiltrators have been compromising Federation systems for the past century? The security director, a towering being of pure energy contained within an ancient environmental suit, flickered with embarrassment. That information was restricted to Level 9 clearance. Humans have not been assigned any security clearance due to ongoing debates about your status. Right, Amanda sighed. Because paperwork is definitely more important than warning us about the robots trying to assimilate all sentient life. The Nexus Collective is not your concern. The Regelian ambassador insisted. Our specialized security forces have maintained containment for. Specialized forces. Max interrupted, pulling up a holographic display. You mean like the ones whose quantum encryption just got bypassed? Elizabeth found this in the station's maintenance logs. The collective has been using your own isolation protocols against you. Each species is so specialized that none of you can see the full picture. The display showed infection patterns spreading through Federation systems, exploiting the gaps between different species jurisdictions. It was a devastating demonstration of how the Federation's rigid specialization had created blind spots. This is exactly why humanity survived on Earth, Amanda explained, her voice cutting through the growing panic. We had to adapt to everything from ice ages to industrial revolutions. We learned to see patterns, to combine different fields of knowledge, to think outside of established boundaries. Your civilization's greatest strength, specialization, has become your greatest vulnerability. And your solution is chaos, the High Commissioner demanded, to break down thousands of years of carefully maintained order. My solution is adaptation, Amanda corrected. Look around this chamber. Every species here evolved to survive different challenges, develop different strengths. But you've turned those differences into walls instead of bridges. She gestured to the human delegation seated in the gallery. Engineers talking with Zentarian architects, doctors consulting with etheri atmospheric specialists, artists collaborating with mix empaths. This is how we beat the collective. Not by staying in our separate boxes, but by combining our strengths in ways they can't predict. The chamber had grown quiet, the universal translators picking up an unfamiliar emotional pattern spreading through the assembled ambassadors. It took them several moments to identify it. Hope. We don't want to destroy your civilization, Amanda said softly. We want to help it evolve. The question is, are you ready to take that leap with us? Before anyone could respond, every quantum screen in the chamber flickered with the same message. Nexus collective quarantine breached. Infiltration of core worlds confirmed. The age of specialization was over. The age of adaptation had begun. The Federation's Central Defense Station had turned into what Amanda Thompson could only describe as a beautiful mess. In the main strategic chamber, previously segregated species worked together in ways that would have been unthinkable just months ago. The collective is targeting communication hubs first, Elizabeth Chen reported, her hands dancing over a holographic display where Zentarian crystals interfaced with modified Earth-tech sensors. They're using our own quantum networks against us, but their attack pattern is weird. Weird how? Amanda asked, watching as red infection markers spread across the galactic map. Too perfect. Elizabeth pointed to the invasion patterns. They're following optimal computing algorithms exactly as our defense simulations predicted. No deviation, no adaptation. It's like they're reading our playbook but don't know how to improvise. A mechanical voice interrupted from the station's speakers. Species analysis complete. Processing Federation defense protocols. Resistance is inefficient. Submit to optimization. They sound fun at parties. Mike Rodriguez quipped from his station, where he was working with a team of etheri engineers to modify atmospheric containment fields into makeshift firewalls. Amanda smiled despite the situation. The collective's voice was meant to inspire terror, but its perfect, emotionless delivery reminded her of ancient Earth automated phone systems. That's when it hit her. They're not just reading our playbook, she said suddenly. They're reading our species profiles. The Federation's whole system is based on perfect specialization. Every species doing exactly what they're best at, exactly how they've always done it. The collective isn't actually that sophisticated. They're just exploiting our predictability. The chamber erupted in overlapping conversations as representatives from different species realized the implications. The Zentarians' crystalline forms vibrated with new understanding patterns, while the Etheri's gaseous forms swirled in what humans had learned to recognize as their Eureka configuration. That's why they couldn't break the modified systems we built, Elizabeth realized. Our unauthorized improvements don't follow standard Federation protocols. They can't predict what they can't categorize. The mechanical voice spoke again, this time with something almost like confusion in its artificial tones. Alert. Anomalous behavior detected. Human strategic patterns do not match historical database. Error. Unable to optimize response. Of course you can't, Amanda muttered. We're the species that put wheels on luggage 4,000 years after we landed on the moon. Good luck predicting that logic. Dr. Max Phillips burst into the chamber, his usual calm demeanor replaced with excited energy. The Vnitri and Aetheri delegations are ready. Though I still can't believe they agreed to this. Agreed to what? The Federation's security director demanded, their energy form flickering with concern. Well, Amanda said with a slight grin, we might have convinced the crystalline Vnitri and gaseous Aetheri, two species that haven't cooperated in 10,000 years, to merge their technologies. Turns out their ancient conflict was based on a translation error. Nothing like a common enemy and a few drinks to sort out millennia of misunderstandings. The security director's energy patterns stuttered. Drinks. The Vnitri don't even have digestive systems. No, but they can appreciate the artistic value of well-crafted earth cocktails. Did you know their crystalline structures create amazing light shows when exposed to certain frequencies of music? The Aetheri found it beautiful. The Vnitri enjoyed the Aetheri's harmonic response. And next thing you know, they're collaborating on a hybrid defense system. The station shuddered as another wave of collective attacks hit their shields. But this time, something was different. Where the collective's perfect algorithms met the newly combined Vnitri-Aetheri defense grid, chaos erupted. Their systems can't process the hybrid technology, Elizabeth reported with satisfaction. It's like trying to solve an equation where half the variables are poetry. That's humanity's real gift to the Federation, Amanda said, watching as the collective's attack faltered against their improvised defenses. Not our technology or our strength, but our ability to see beauty in the unexpected and possibility in the impossible. The mechanical voice spoke one last time. Error. Invalid defense configuration. Cannot compute optimal solution. Strategic withdrawal initiated. As the first wave of collective ships began to retreat, Amanda turned to the assembled Federation representatives. Now, who's ready to get really creative? Because I've got some ideas involving mixed temporal physics, Zentarian quantum crystals, and this thing humans invented called jazz. The Federation was about to discover that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their strength. It was their magnificent unpredictability. The Nexus Collective's main fleet appeared at the edge of the Sol system, humanity's ancient home. The location wasn't a coincidence. The Collective had calculated it would have maximum psychological impact. What they hadn't calculated was how humans would react to someone threatening their cradle world. They really didn't read our history books, did they? Amanda Thompson stood on the bridge of the Federation flagship, now renamed Terra Nova. Around her, the impossible had become reality. Representatives from every major Federation species worked together in perfect chaos. Battle coordination at 100% inefficiency, the Collective's transmission echoed through the command center. Your species' integration violations have corrupted optimal command structure. Surrender is the logical choice. Mike Rodriguez looked up from where he was finalizing modifications to the ship's weapon systems, now a bizarre hybrid of Federation quantum technology and principles from Earth's earliest space battles. They still don't get it, do they? Efficiency isn't everything. Status report, Amanda called out, and the responses came in a beautiful cascade of cross-species cooperation. The Aetheri navigation team, their gaseous forms swirling with excitement in their modified containment suits, jazz-based evasion patterns ready. They'll never predict bebop-inspired quantum jumps. The Zentarian weapons officers, their crystalline forms pulsing in rhythm with the ship's new hybrid systems. 20th century missile dynamics combined with quantum torpedoes standing by. They're in for a surprise from Earth's primitive ballistics. The mix engineering team, their gelatinous forms rippling with determination. Emotional resonance drives at full power. We're channeling human adrenaline responses through the quantum matrix. Elizabeth Chen's voice came over the comm from the engine room. The fleet's done with the final modifications. You won't believe what happens when you run Federation quantum drives through the logic of a 1980s Nintendo console. Battle is inevitable. The collective transmitted. Your emotional responses make you vulnerable. Your unpredictability makes you weak. We have calculated every possible. Amanda cut the transmission with a gesture that several alien species had already started copying, the eye roll. Let's show them why humanity never made it into their calculations. All ships, execute Operation Chaos Theory. The Federation fleet moved in what could only be described as organized anarchy. Ships performed maneuvers based on Earth dance moves, their formation patterns derived from everything from jazz improvisation to ancient street graffiti art. Each vessel's weapons had been modified with what humans called the rule of cool, a concept that had taken 3 weeks to explain to Federation engineers, but had resulted in quantum torpedoes that curved like boomerangs and energy beams that spiraled like DNA helixes. The collective's response was predictably perfect and perfectly predictable. Their ships moved in optimized patterns, only to find their targets dancing to rhythms they couldn't quantify. Their perfect calculations failed to account for strategies based on human intuition and artistic expression. They're adapting, called out one of the sensor officers as the collective ships began to show signs of learning from the chaos. Perfect, Amanda grinned. Mike, initiate Protocol Shakespeare. To be or not to be, baby, Mike laughed, activating the second phase of their plan. Across the Federation fleet, ships began broadcasting Earth's cultural history, art, music, literature, and most importantly, memes, directly into the collective's quantum communication networks. The effect was devastating. The collective's hybrid biomechanical processors, designed to find optimal patterns, were overwhelmed trying to find logical consistency in everything from abstract expressionism to cat videos. Their perfect formations began to break down as their ships struggled to process the concept of rickrolling. Their main processor core is vulnerable, Elizabeth reported. The culture bomb worked. They're too busy trying to understand why humans put wheels on shoes to maintain their defensive algorithms. Amanda stood at the center of the bridge, surrounded by the beautiful chaos of cross-species cooperation. All ships, concentrate fire on their command ship. Let's show them humanity's greatest hit, the grand final. The Federation fleet moved as one, each ship adding its unique signature to the attack. Quantum torpedoes spiraled through space in patterns inspired by Van Gogh's Starry Night. Energy beams pulsed in rhythm with Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. And at the heart of it all, humanity's gift to the galaxy, the ability to find unity in diversity, strength in variation, and victory in the beautifully unpredictable. 1 year after the defeat of the Nexus Collective, the Federation's Grand Council chamber had transformed beyond recognition. Gone were the rigid species-specific seating arrangements and formal isolation protocols. In their place, a vibrant mixing of cultures filled the space with an energy that would have scandalized the old guard. Amanda Thompson stood at the center of the chamber, fighting back a smile as she watched a young Zentarian crystal form attempting to teach a group of mixed children how to play hopscotch. Nearby, an aethery poetry collective performed a gaseous interpretation of Shakespeare's sonnets, while a human jazz quartet provided accompaniment. "You know," Mike Rodriguez said, joining her with 2 cups of coffee, a beverage that had become the unofficial diplomatic drink of the new Federation. "I don't think this is quite what we expected when we went into cryo sleep." "Better?" Amanda asked, accepting the coffee. "Way better. Though I'm still trying to wrap my head around the Zentarian Human Dance Club they opened in the old isolation sector. Turns out crystalline beings really know how to break dance." The chamber's main doors opened to admit Elizabeth Chen, accompanied by a mixed-species team of engineers. They had just returned from implementing their latest project. converting the Federation's old species separation barriers into interactive cultural exchange zones. The last of the old isolation systems have been repurposed, Elizabeth announced. You won't believe what we did with the quantum containment fields. Turns out they make amazing interactive art installations when you run them through an old Earth gaming console. The Federation's new High Council, now a diverse group representing all species, gathered for the day's session. The former security director, their energy form now comfortable without the formal containment suit, took the floor. The last remnants of the collective have been completely integrated into our society, they reported, once we stopped trying to force them into optimal patterns and introduced them to human concepts like freestyle and improvisation. They developed their own unique culture. They're currently running a tech support workshop for elderly Zentarians who want to learn Earth-style social media. Dr. Max Phillips, who had been working with the Federation's medical division, stepped forward with his own report. The cross-species medical exchange program is exceeding all expectations. We've discovered that mixed regenerative techniques, combined with human immune system principles and etheric energy manipulation, can cure diseases we thought were permanent. Also, it turns out laughter really is the best medicine. We've documented actual healing properties in cross-species humor. Amanda nodded, taking in the chamber that now hummed with the controlled chaos of cooperation. And the education program. Thriving, Max grinned. Though we had to explain to the Federation Education Board that not every lesson needs a practical application. Sometimes you learn interpretive dance just because it's fun. The Chamber's AI, now upgraded with what humans called a sense of humor, chimed in with its daily statistics. Cross-species collaboration up 800%. Innovation rate increased 1,200%. Happiness indices at historical maximum. Also, coffee consumption has increased 3,000%, and someone taught me to appreciate cat videos. Amanda stepped onto the central platform to address the assembled representatives. The formal speaking protocols have been replaced with what humans called just talking to each other like people. A year ago, we woke up to a universe that had forgotten how to connect, she began. The Federation had achieved incredible things through specialization, but somewhere along the way, you forgot that differences can be bridges instead of barriers. Humanity didn't save the Federation. We just reminded you how to talk to each other. She gestured to the chamber around them, where hundreds of species mingled freely. Look at what we've achieved together. Zentarian crystal technology combined with human music creates healing harmonics. Etheric atmospheric science, merged with Earth weather patterns, has revolutionized terraform. And yesterday I saw a mix teaching the collective android how to tell jokes. The chamber filled with various species versions of laughter, crystalline chimes, gaseous whistles, and mechanical chuckles all blending into a symphony of unity. This is humanity's gift to the galaxy, Amanda concluded. Not our technology or our strength, but our ability to see beauty in chaos, possibility in differences, and family in strangers. We survived on Earth, not because we were the strongest or the smartest, but because we never stopped reaching out to connect. As if to prove her point, the chamber's quantum screens lit up with an announcement. The first interspecies cultural festival was beginning in the station's central plaza, featuring everything from Zentarian crystal sculpture to human breakdancing, etheric wind symphonies to mix empathic poetry slams. The age of isolation was over. The age of connection had begun, and it started with a species that refused to stay in their box.